Hello, everyone. Good evening, and thank you for joining us today. Is this sound all right? All good? Awesome. First day of spring, and we've got whiteout condition. What can I say? And thank you still for still being here. Thank you so much. I love the energy here, so thank you. Welcome to the Journey to Leadership, a conversation with trailblazing women in insurance in honor of Women's History Month and International Women's Day. My name is Banaz Irani, Senior Vice President for the Desjardins Agent Network, and I'm honored to be your host this evening. Today, we have the privilege of hearing from three inspiring women. On most days, they are friendly industry competitors. Let's be honest. Okay? And I love that because we've got representation from all the organizations here. So thank you. But today, they're putting this aside to have an important conversation and showcase a great example of how women support women. So thank you. They have each paved the way to the top and along the way inspired a new generation of women. And we are privileged to have them join us. They represent the change we want to see in this world. And our goal is for each of you to walk away from today's event feeling inspired. I'm positive that each of our panelists have had a person or a network assist them in growing their mindset, pushing them beyond what they thought they were capable of to allow them to achieve great success. Over the past 30 years, we as a society have started to see a shift in mindset, a shift in inclusion. I've been witness to changes in the industry and the importance of creating a seat at the table for all. Gender parity and female empowerment has been a long-standing commitment at Desjardins, and our work and the commitment of the group continues to evolve. So let me now introduce you to our women trailblazers in insurance. I start with my very own boss, Valérie Lavoie, President and Chief Operating Officer, Desjardins General Insurance Group. Valérie Lavoie joined Desjardins in 1994 and held a number of strategic positions, being named President and Chief Operating Officer of Desjardins General Insurance Group in 2019. She has always been skilled at rallying her teams around one common objective. We all know what's close to our heart, doing what's best for members and clients. Valérie Lavoie is now in charge of a sector with 6.9 billion in gross written premiums that serves 3.8 million clients across Canada and employs nearly 7,000 people. So welcome, Valérie. It's great to have you here. Jolee Crosby, CEO Reinsurance Canada and English Caribbean and Canada Country President at SwissRe. Jolee has held a number of leadership roles of increasing responsibility since joining SwissRe in 1998, including head of Asia Medical Products and Operations, and most recently, global head of life and health underwriting and medical reinsurance, with additional responsibilities for core solution development for all life and health insurance lines of business. I know it's not here, but Jolee said she worked in Singapore and a lot of Asian countries. Awesome, amazing. She has led a global governance team ensuring the appropriate framework was in place to assess and manage operational risk. Her responsibilities also included compliance-related topics such as international trade controls, fraud detection initiatives, data protection, and business continuity management. Welcome, Jolee. Tracy Garrad, President and CEO of Aviva Canada Inc. Tracy is a seasoned CEO and has had a varied and distinguished career in financial services spanning almost 25 years, including senior leadership roles with Santander Group, HSBC, and AXA. She commenced her new role as CEO for Aviva Canada's businesses in October 2023. Her functional experience extends across technology and transformation, mergers and acquisitions, operations, and commercial roles. She's a passionate advocate and activist for inclusion. She was executive sponsor for diversity and inclusion initiatives across Access UK and Ireland businesses and was named in 2017 as one of the 100 women to watch in Cranfield University's FTSE board report. Thank you for joining us. We're all privileged to have you all here. Thank you. Let's get this started because we're waiting for this conversation. So, Valerie, let's start with you first. Can you tell us about your journey to leadership and how you got to where you are today?
Yes, so first, hello everyone. So very pleased to be here and with me, my colleagues here. So my journey in the insurance industry was like a lot of people here, not planned really. So I first initially graduated in biology at university. And then there was so many things that I want to do. I was a little bit curious. And then I chose to pursue with a degree at university in actuarial science. And 30 years ago, I joined Desjardins through the actuarial department, and I have stayed since in Desjardins. And insurance is really a dynamic industry. And okay, I know that a lot of people saying that it's not so sexy, I would say. And but
Nice
honestly, just think about that. Insurance, PNC insurance is it's protecting probably the biggest investments in assets that someone will do. So in the house, business. So honestly, it's something that we're doing in this industry that is really unique. And so I think it's what actually attract me in the industry and join this and actually I did my career into that. So I grew with Desjardins. You all said about that, Benaz. So and I held a lot of position within the group, and now I'm the president and CEO of DGIG since 2019.
Jolee, over to you. Would love to you to share because you've been,
Yeah,
to different places.
I have had a journey that if you'd told me when I was a young girl I would be here, I never would have expected it. So a little bit more about me because we're all friends, right? So kind of cone of silence. No, I was the first person in my family to graduate from college, and then I went on to law school too. So I joke that I'm a recovering attorney because I'm not practicing any longer. And I worked at an insurance defense firm. So some of you obviously possibly oversee or work with attorneys. So I was one that I worked for about 20 different insurance companies. So they would retain my services to defend our insureds. And I realized quite quickly that all the decisions were being made at the insurance company. And I wanted to be that decision maker. So I went to SwissRe. It was actually GE Insurance or ERC for some of you that have been in the industry a while. And that was a great experience. I ended up overseeing litigation on the E&O line. So some of you, maybe agents and brokers, E&O carriers. I was the E&O carrier. So it was a great place to learn insurance, lawyers malpractice, accountants malpractice. Moved to a governance role, then moved to the reinsurance side of the house where I was overseeing U.S. casualty claims. And then I got the call, and I'm sure we'll talk about it. It was a defining moment in my career where someone reached out to me that I had made a contact with in the company, actually a fellow Canadian, Melanie Slack. If anyone knows her, she's now retired. But she gave me a call and she said, "Hey, I've got an opportunity for you." And I was like, "Yeah, but you're in life and health and I'm in P&C." And she's like, "Oh, that's not a problem." And I said, "Yeah, but you're in products and I'm in claims." And she's like, "Oh, that's not a problem." And she said, "But it's in Singapore, not Kansas City." And that's when I found myself saying, "Not a problem." So my husband, 3 kids, 2 dogs, we moved to Singapore, and I moved to life and health, which was a little crazy, and then moved back to Connecticut about 5 years ago, where I was overseeing underwriting for life and health, plus the medical line of business, solution development. And then here, I got the call for this move, which is PNC in life and health. And I just pinch myself every day. And there are lots of leadership lessons across that journey. Um, and I look forward to sharing more with you. So it's been a lot of hard work. I don't like to talk about luck because to me, luck is more about hard work and putting in the effort. But luck, hard work, and a lot of great people around me.
We're going to dig into it some more. But over to you, Tracy, because I know you've moved countries, continent to take on this role.
Business line and company.
Is it on?
Yeah, country, continent, business line, and company all at the same time last October. Yeah. So a bit of an unconventional start, I suppose, for what am I in my fourth CEO role? And sorry for the Aviva people that are in the room. You've heard it before. I actually had my first experience of leadership age 17. I just didn't know at the time that that's what it was, because we were a one-parent family, very humble beginnings for those of you social housing, and at 17 my mother died, and I found myself with responsibility for 4 younger siblings. And so I say that that was my first experience of leadership, because I had to very quickly, almost overnight, develop the ability to inspire them that tomorrow could be better than today, to negotiate resources, to problem solve, to apply discipline at the same time as compassion and encouragement, all the things that we as leaders have to do all the time. But after 2 years of trying to be both parents to those, I had to make the toughest decision of my life, which was to say, I'm not ready and I'm not able to do this. And to have them go and live with other members of the family, which, was really tough, but was the best thing for them. But what it meant then was that I had to go and find a job, and I had no qualifications. Right? I had the basic educational certificate that you get at 16. And I had the good fortune to go and work for somebody that within 3 weeks of me going to work for her in the most basic, it was a call center type job, dealing with like customers who were phoning up complaining. And within 3 weeks, she spotted something and kind of asked me to explain why I wasn't in university, and then proceeded to encourage this quite small company to give me support to go back into education, which I did part-time. And so I could say, the rest is history, but what I then did effectively was move sectors. So I worked in home improvements, in technology, in the motor business, in shipping. I moved all over the place in different functional departments as well. I picked up some executive education along the way. And that's an awful lot in a thumbnail, but it's why I'm passionate about development, spotting potential, and having structures and mechanisms that catch people that can fall off the tracks through no fault of their own.
Thank you. And it's for your vulnerability. And when we said we were going to have an inspiring conversation, this is just the beginning of it. So thank you. Thank you. Jolee, I want to come back to you on, we talk about the people who support us. If you could recognize the one person who helped you get to where you are today, who would that be?
I mean, there's a long list probably for all of us, but the person that had the most influence on me is my grandmother. When I was 15, we all have our history. I left home at 2 a.m. Didn't know where I was going to go. It was not a great environment, abusive environment. Drug. We all have our stories, but I knew I had to leave. That I had to get out of that environment. It felt I just had to leave. And so my grandmother actually took me in. with my grandfather. And that was hard for them because there was a lot of resistance in the family because they're taking on a 15-year-old. And I was not a wild child, though. I was actually a really good kid. But she was the one that told me that because we were similar to you, we didn't have money. Um, and she was the one, I was the first one to graduate from college. She was the one to tell me, aim high. There's no reason you can't achieve a lot more. And so she was the one that pushed me. She also would get mad at me. She was the one that told me that when I got married, I had to have candle lighters because don't you know people come to weddings just to see candle lighters. So she was a fiery woman that I adored. And in fact, this necklace, this reminds me of her too. So I always think of that because whenever when I think about how hard she pushed me, she's the one that helped me with my character, with understanding integrity, what's important, and then pushed me that I could have a better life than what my beginnings were. And so that would be the person. But again, there's a laundry list of people that are so important to me.
And this is an important conversation because, yes, we have been helped by individuals, but this is also our turn to help others,
Yes.
right? As a group here. So, Tracy, I know you mentioned one individual. Is there somebody else too?
Yeah, I mean, so Stephanie is my lifelong friend. She's godmother to my daughter who's sitting over there.
Lydia.
She is the person that I went to work for, who I say constantly she changed my life, because at that time she had more confidence in me than I had in myself about my ability to be more than I ever possibly could think. The other person I have to mention, though, is my husband. So I've been married to the same person for 34 years this
Wow.
year, and you know,
I'm 33, by the way.
Yeah,
I've
right.
it's
So that
35.
Oh, wow.
so
If only the
this,
husbands knew you.
this also dispels a really important myth that successful females are only ever single or divorced and not mothers, because we're all demonstrating that is girl power. But the other person I have to mention is my husband, because I would say that he has always had at least as much, possibly more aspiration for me than he had for himself. And he was willing to make sacrifices along the way and to make compromises in order for me to pursue my goals and fulfill my potential. And I am, forever grateful. And he has that label, we were just talking about it, has that label of trailing spouse. And it's I think it's incredibly difficult for them, but he's just such a great support. I could not have done what I've done without him.
Thanks, Tracy. And that's an important conversation too, because it's about allies, and allies could be in the form of your spouse, could be in form of family members. And we've got a lot of individuals here who would play. Blair, I'm just looking at you. but great allies. And yes, thank you for being here to listen to that conversation. Valerie, I know Alain is
Yes.
your ally too.
Yes, yes, yes. And yes, we have a long list, I guess we can share. So I will talk about two. Okay, I know you asked one, but no. First, it's a former manager of mine. He asked me at one point, I was at the actuarial department at that moment, and he told me, okay, just list where you see yourself in the next years and so. So, and at one point, he told me, okay, go discuss with this manager, another man, because it was two men. So he said that I think is there something maybe for you and that. And I just say, oh my God, are you kidding? You asking me to go somewhere else, and it's not even in the list I gave you where I want to be. So he said, no, go and go just discuss. Okay, so I will go. And finally, it was an amazing journey. So it was I went to the distribution side, and the person there was a mentor for me as well. So I think it was very great. And what I learned from this, it's sometimes I think people see in you something you don't see yourself. And it was really for me enlightening at that time to see, okay, yes, there was something that probably I was not comfortable with, or so it pushed me a little bit further. So I think we need to often listen to others also to see what they have to give to us as well. And the second one is my son Jonathan. I have two sons, so and one of them, Jonathan, is on the autism spectrum, and he inspires me daily. Honestly, it's you know. He is now 25, and every day since he's born, he has to push himself through limits, through a lot of things. And I ask him a lot as well because he did have also some issues with his fine motricity, so did like a lot of therapy. And so, however, I said, oh my God, I asked him to push himself on a daily basis, so I should also push myself and go out of my comfort zone on a daily basis. So it's honestly, I'm very blessed, and I feel grateful to have this son with me that helped me and is so amazing, but also that he pushed me every day. It's like a model for me of persistency. Persistency, yes,
Yes,
good, okay.
yes.
Persistency, and also a lot of yes, a lot of energy, and so yes. So sometimes life is giving us things that we think it's yes, can be tough, but at the same time when you can get out the positive of it is different. And so yes, it is good for my personal life, but it is very good also for my professional life. So
And Valerie, I know, having said that, you've made it, you've supported others. You will, many of us who have kids with special needs, and you've really helped us come out, talk about it, and bring that support to work. And we appreciate that too. So thank you. And what I hear from all three of you is the rise to the top has not been easy. You've had different challenges, but you've had challenges. And that didn't stop you from getting where you deserve to be. Let's be honest, you deserve to be at the top. So thank you. Now, I will go start with you, Tracy, on this one. We have Invest in Women, Accelerate Progress was the theme for International Women's Day this year. What does this mean to you, and what is your organization doing to drive economic empowerment?
Well, I mean, this is such a big topic. I could sit here all night. So, but with a couple of minutes, I guess there's the basics first of all, which is about as an organization fulfilling that responsibility of ensuring that you have got pay equity. And it, you know, I say it as a castaway, it's a given, and I'm sure that all of our organizations are doing it, but there are far too many organizations that still are not. And that, I think, I'm frustrated by the continuing discussion about pay gap and the structural issues that result in a pay gap between men and women. And that's the same problem, the world over almost. So I think we have to constantly keep vigilance and have processes in place that really ensure that we do genuinely have pay equity. I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing is creating aspiration and encouraging women who in many cases have been brought up to be very polite, to be willing to ask the difficult question. So there's a brilliant book out there. I don't remember who wrote it because it's a long time since I read it, and I've read it 2 or 3 times. It's called Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office. Brilliant. And one of the things that it taught me was nice girls don't ask. When you're a little girl, you're taught, wait to be offered. You don't ask. And I think one of the reasons that we do still see continuing pay equity differences is that women are less likely to ask and to push for what they think they're worth. And we have to do 2 things. We have to give them the aspiration and tell them how good they are, that they deserve to ask. And we have to not rely upon them asking and do the right thing even if they don't. And I think that's really important. And then I think the third thing is, beyond an employer responsibility, economic empowerment of women is about educating them and educating them about how to protect themselves in their retirement, educating them about how to have economic independence in order to not be reliant upon somebody who might be making their life difficult. I think there's a lot to do around empowerment in educating about how to be economically self-sufficient and to protect themselves. I could go on about a lot of other things, but they'd be my three top things, I think.
Jolie, would you like to add anything?
So those are all really good things. And at SwissRe, we're doing quite a bit. I mean, it is a KPI that I am tracked on with my boss on gender pay gap and the number of women that I have in leadership roles. So it is tracked, but that gives us a false sense of security that maybe we're on the right track. And I think we are on the right track. But let me tell you a story. It was just a little over a year ago, it was a year ago this last December, I had to go to our external board and to present about the line of business I ran, the medical line of business. It was in Zurich, really, stressful, huge ornate room. I walked into that room, which had the and I'm a senior leader, but these most senior leaders at SwissRe, and then the external board members. Do you know I was the only woman in that room? Except for the note taker. And I hadn't thought about that in so long. And so it made me realize that for all the good things that we're doing, and by the way, now if I walked into that room, there would be women in that room, which is great, but we should never be complacent. I think about my own experience where I would get like a 15% raise. And first you're like, that's great, awesome. And then you realize, wait a minute, am I underpaid? So you have that thing. And then you always have that catch up element when you start to think about, when we talk about this, how women have been underpaid for a number of years, and there's a cumulative effect. So two things that we're doing. One is we are tracking the KPIs, which is really good. So it keeps everything focused. The other thing is we did have a program that I was a part of where they selected a certain number of women that were senior vice presidents. And they said, we want 50% of this class to make it to managing director in the next 18 months. So it put pressure on the organization to do it. And I was actually one that did do it. So we don't have that program right now, but I can tell you that my bosses who are EC members, this is something that they always ask me. Why? Where's your diversity? And so those are two ideas. The big thing though is that gender pay gap, and we've made considerable progress. I'm really proud of the work that we've done, but there's more work to do.
Valerie, I know Desjardins is committed to this as well.
Yes, and you're right. We should not take for granted what we see sometimes that it will stay forever. Even I would say, gender equality is not is so much more than just hiring women to meet a target. It's so much about that. It's really what we have to do as an organization. For sure, it's to foster a dynamic environment where the employees, women, and even almost everybody or other kind of equity, but to grow and develop their skills. It's really what we should look at. And it reminds me a story when I heard you just, I would say, a year ago. Because we are at par at the Executive Management Committee of DGIG. And so we had a really interesting discussion at the time because we were following our numbers and we are at par. So yes, good. So at one point, someone said, okay, but I think that we're pretty good. Maybe we can look at something else, I would say. So we had a really good discussion because one of my VP at that time said, you know what, only 10 years ago, I was part of this committee and I was the only woman in this committee. 10 years ago, it's not that long in the GIG's life or in the industry life. And so we have to always continue to look at it. It's in Canada for the last 30 years, the woman, the workforce had increased from 76% to 86% in Canada. But still, it's still 14% of women that still not part of the working force. And we are good in Canada. You told that, Tracy, that it's not the same everywhere. So we need to continue. And in Desjardins, our president, Guy Cormier, is a man, but he's really push us to this kind of diversity, and mainly gender diversity for him is so important. And we're at part also at the group level. And for sure, we have some program like female empowerment, where we offer a unique development program for women. So and we have other ones, but I think it's really that, and we should continue on this path to promote it, to make sure that people and often women, we all know they're not so that confident when comes the time to apply to a job. So how we can help them. So it's important to have this discussion, the space to talk about it, so they will feel better, and for the next generation as well, to show that it's possible for them to be uh, to be or to do what they want and to be what they want as well. So I think it's really
If
important.
if it's all right, if I one
Yeah, sure.
observation, I just moved to Canada in July, and since I'm PNC in life and health, PNC,
Mm.
I've been so impressed with the level of female executives in the PNC side. I go to the life and health side. It's not the same thing. I'll go to like we're part of an organization, IBC, and there's a similar organization on the life and health side. It's not the same. So we have a lot of work to do. We just can never pat ourselves on the back.
It's interesting you say that, Jolie, because just this week, I don't know if you read it in the Globe and the Mail, there was an article that spoke about that in the top 6 banks in Canada, a lot of the CEOs are coming up for retirement, and the there is no female leadership to be the likely successor. They're all male. The candidates that are being considered are all male. And they said that 13 years ago, the RBC CEO at that time, Nixon, had, predicted that there would be a female CEO by now. And forget having a female CEO by then, they don't even have it in the near future. So I say that because it's an excellent point. We, as an insurance industry, are very lucky to have these leaders. We cannot take them for granted. You know what I mean? Because to your point, Valerie, if we don't keep at it, we will, we might lose it. It's you have to stay on top of this to make it happen. And I think having leaders like yourself inspire the next generation is so
Oh,
important.
yes, and we see all around the world how it's going in some countries, in some other places. And so if we do not continue, not take it for granted, it's always the mindset I think we should have for this. So really,
So maybe Valerie, I'll start with you for the next question, which is as senior leaders, you have an influential role at the decision-making table. How important is it to have diversity there?
but it is really important, and not just about gender, but also actually what I'm trying to do. It's really to we are serving members and clients in our industry, so we are trying. I am trying to get a diverse group that are taking decision and in the PNC that represent our members and client actually. So yes, for sure the all the gender, but also all of kind. So the representation from Ontario. Let's say we're a Quebecer-based organization, so having people in Ontario also there. From every communities or whatever, so it's very important. I just think it is we are taking better decision at the end because of that. So I truly believe in that, having different perspective on it. So for me, it's very important. And our members and clients actually comes from different backgrounds. So we need to offer them, to listen to them, and having people that coming from diverse background that representing them is just for me an obvious thing to do. So yes, I'm looking a lot for that.
Tracy, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I suppose firstly, the empirical data about the proving of long-term better shareholder returns from more diverse teams is out there. It's out there now over 10 or 12 years of tracking. And it's not insubstantial. It's 25% or more better returns from companies that have greater diversity. So I get really frustrated at the whole debate about why the data is there. It's evidence-based. We shouldn't even have to talk about the why anymore. But I think there's something more important, and it comes to Valerie's point, which is the diversity of thought is really important. I'm going to make a broad brush generalization here. And so for the men in the room, I'm really sorry. I know that I am often the person who is willing to say, I don't understand. Can you please explain that for me? And I see lots of my male counterparts in the room breathe a sigh of relief that I've asked the question
For you.
that
Good.
they would not have asked. And so I think that willingness to be a little bit more vulnerable to say, and I'm really sorry, I know it's a generalization, Lee. I know you wouldn't do, but you know, I do think that there are some personality traits that we do show up differently, and therefore it's really important that we do have that breadth of difference. And I think it's really important that, back to the ally point, that we all embrace that, not roll our eyes at the facts, you know. So yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with everything that Valerie has just said. It's about more than gender diversity, but culture and tone are set by the mix of people that you have around the table, and healthier cultures and better tones are evident when you've got a mix of people. Again, I think there are many cases of that on record. So better financial outcomes are proven, shouldn't be a discussion point. Diversity of thought and background, better decisions, better conversations, more scrutiny and curiosity.
Thank you. Jolie?
So I agree with everything, but I want to just tell a little story, because I love stories, that will put an emphasis to this. So when I moved from P&C to life and health, I was told by some very senior leaders at my company I was making the biggest career mistake of my life, that I would never be accepted in life and health because life and health is full of actuaries.
Oh, we know all about that.
And I'm not an actuary. And I was mortified. I was like, okay, I'm moving my family clear across to Asia. And I didn't know anything about the markets, and people there were, you know, they were very welcoming at first. And they ended up being great. And funny enough, side story, the PNC colleagues, they forget that I started in PNC, and they're like, oh, so how do you like PNC? And like the first 15 years of my career were in PNC. But it just kind of shows you. But my boss at the time then fast forward, my boss, who now is my boss, he was the chief pricing officer, and I was told that I would report into him. Complete fears, you know, my vulnerability. I was like, oh my gosh, this is a big mistake. I've moved my family to Asia. He's going to figure out that I don't know what I'm doing because I'm not an actuary. This is like the senior actuary. And so one time I was very vulnerable with him. And by the way, he's a big Yogi Brene Brown fan, which is fabulous. And I said to him, I'm not an actuary. And he's like, I know you're not an actuary. He's like, but that's what I like. He said, because you give me a different perspective. You think about things differently. He said, everyone else in the room is an actuary. And he said, so we need your voice. So he set the tone for me to have that voice, to ask that question, not to have that self-censoring self-doubt. And I've carried that through with the people that I put around me too, because my biggest fear is groupthink. If you look at the losses that can amount to millions of dollars, it's because you get this groupthink mentality where you have what I call kind of Me Too people around. Me too, I agree. And that's what you don't want. That's a fear of mine. So I want people that think differently, because I think that's how we get to the better result. And I'm fortunate enough to work in an environment, in a culture where that is now celebrated. It may not have been in years past, but it is now.
I see how much I loved what you said because I think you missed out on Valerie giving me the look because we have because she knows that being very vulnerable. I'm surrounded by actuaries on our executive team, and I'm not an actuary. I have a financial accounting background. So regardless of whether I have a degree like an MBA, that that vulnerability alone, I'm not an actuary. Had to get over that. I had to get over that. So this conversation that you had felt like the conversation we have, and I have with all my actuaries.
Well, and that was the conversation I had with my boss. And he's like, and I said, but I don't know how to cost a deal. I don't know how to do. And he's like, listen, can you look at a deal and tell me if it's a good deal or a bad deal? I'm like, yeah, this is, he's like, what do you look at? Blah, blah. I rattled off things. And he's like, that's what I need. He's like, I don't need you to tell me if you're using the ladder method or I'm not even going to profess to be an actuary.
But I think there's a really important point here, which is, and it took me a while to get comfortable with it. As you do get more senior, you have to be ready to accept and embrace that you need people in roles that often are stronger technically in that space than you are. Because, in our roles, we are general managers and the clue is in the name. You have to do a bit of everything. So I think there's a real lesson there in being able to learn to tap in and deep dive where your gut and the data points are telling you there's something you need to dig into, but also being willing to accept that you need really good, strong people at a senior level that sometimes are better than you in their space. And that's a difficult lesson. It's quite a leap when you make that first step, I would say, into a general manager job, because you feel like you should have the answer to everything and you have to be the person who knows. And it's a big leap to let go of that.
And on this, I think the first thing is that you have to know yourself a lot, and you have to be humble also to know, okay, where are my blind spots? Where are my, I'll say, weaknesses? Or anyways, yes, my weaknesses. So, and to be surrounded by people that complement you for sure. Because yes, if an insurance company, let's say, just have actuaries around the table, I honestly, like, they will go bankrupt. I can tell you. It will be crazy. I'm allowed to say that as I am an actuary. No, I mean, that's true. So we need people, and yes, we were laughing, but because yes, Denaz and some other around the table, sometimes we're in the discussion. I mean, it's not about actuarial science at all. It's about business. So that's it, and about our members and clients. So it's to be complementary at the end. So we need to acknowledge that and to give the space to people also, to give the space, because for sure I always looking at my executive management committee, and I know sometimes the directions where it's going and who will talk, say what. And then I have to call out someone, say, okay, give me your perspective now, yourself, because sometimes, yes, can be, at least at first, when people join the executive management committee or a new group or whatever. So I think it's kind of things we need to think about as well, is how we ask for, let's say, women mainly, women, what do you think about it? Because if you do not call out, they won't. Often, more often than men, they won't talk at the table if they are not asked for, if they are not comfortable with the topic. So I think it's our role also to do so.
I think it leads very well into the next question, which is, we know that we have important allies. Allies are important. How do you empower women as well? It's really important. Valerie, to your point, you can give somebody a seat at the table, but do you give them the voice at the table? So, in your mind, and I'm going to open it up, whoever wants to go first, what advice would you give all of us?
Well, I'll go. I think there's a couple of things. So, firstly, I could not agree more. I think allies are really important, and we can't properly have the conversation and expect to make progress if only half of us are in the conversation. So that's given. Back to the point earlier about nice girls don't ask. You know, sometimes women, as much as they've got great potential, they might not have that confidence. And so I do think in promoting people, giving people stretch opportunities, we have to also give them the support frameworks to help ensure they succeed and not just leave them to sink or swim. And I'm really proud actually that, you know, in Aviva we have got programs where we do that, and we've got mentoring arrangements, and sometimes the person won't ask for the help, but they will accept it and benefit from it if it's offered.
Mhm.
And so I think not relying solely upon people to be self-aware of the need, but to offer it for them to take up, it's much easier to accept something than maybe to ask for help and support sometimes. And then I think the second thing is about our own responsibility for our development. So a little bit like Jolee said, you know, if I'm going into a situation where I have the potential to feel intimidated, I take it upon myself to do that preparation, to go to give myself the confidence that I know the topic. And but that can only come from self-awareness, and then the ability to build a network that can give you that support as well. And I won't say that, you know, at my younger, less mature levels of thinking, I was as good at doing that as probably I've become now, because there is a self-awareness and a maturity that comes from experience. But getting on top of your topic can remove a lot of that. You know, people talk about imposter syndrome and do you still get it? I think we can all be exposed to it, but for me, the way I overcome it is to know that I've done my prep in order that I eliminate the doubt in my own mind.
What's the question again? Sorry.
I know, because it was
No, it was
you had quite the impact in
Yeah.
what you were saying, and because Tracy, you touched upon the imposter syndrome, because I keep going back to, you know, all the positions that you all took on. Like surely you took on something that was totally different too, and you had to overcome that fear, right? And to truly believe in yourself and go for it, knowing you could fail too, but you have to believe in yourself. And
But that was such a defining moment for me because I realized I wasn't going to let fear dictate my life
Yep.
choices. It's kind of scary though. It's easier now that I've done it and I've made so many cross-functional moves. That first one, I guess that was technically my second one, but going across the world, that, you know, took it to a whole other level. You do get a little more comfortable with I always say you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, which goes to your point where you're not going to know all the answers. So you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, not letting fear dictate your life choices. And when you start to embrace that, I found for me that it opened up a world of opportunity, because I wasn't self-censoring myself any longer. And that's just so empowering because then you learn so much, you experience a lot, and the other thing is, then this is when the bossy self in me comes out. I start to go to people and say, hey, what about this opportunity? Have you thought about this? And they say, well, I don't know that I can do this. Yeah, you can do this. You can do this. I've had people do that to me. And so I want to try and do that to others around me.
and Valerie, that was the question of allies. And
So I remember. So yes, but allies are very, very important though. And man for me, but you know, the two people I named for, it was man actually that helped me grow up in the company. And but honestly, but maybe one of the advice also, again, I will get back to know yourself a lot, because I think when you know yourself better, it just then to accept you. It goes with accepting who you are, what you want as well, because at one point, maybe for you it's good to be where you are and you do not want to grow within the organization. And you know, at that one point, it's perfect because you have to know yourself. I think it's you should be allowed to accept who you are and what you want to do, but to do so, you have to know yourself a lot. And you know, when you know what drives you, then it's easier, and then you can go to CLI, how we can, your network, it's so important, and to go to see people that can help you. And one of the thing, I think it's women between us also, we need to be very, very, helpful with each other. When someone just, in Teams, when someone, a woman just wrote to me to say, can I have 5 minutes with you or whatever, whoever he is this person, I don't mind. It's a woman that raises and dare to raise his hands and to ask me something. I think we just need to say, yes, I will be there for you. And yeah, I am here for you anyways. So if we have this kind of also community and with man, because man, I know a lot of men that are helping a lot of women to grow within the organization. So allies are so important, honestly. So and about the syndrome, imposter. Thank you, imposter. You know French now. Syndrome imposter. Oh my God. When I joined my current role, I can just tell you, because joining my role, I went to also to the executive committee of Desjardins in the banking world and life and wealth learn. It was totally different, I can tell you. And I saw at the same time at the beginning, I said, oh my God, what I'm doing here is crazy. I don't know this world at all. But there was one of my colleagues, a man, another man, so I was looking at another man. I talked with him a day and I said, I just try to figure out, how to be better at this. And he just said to me, oh my God, just be yourself. That's it. I said, oh, so easy. No, it's not that easy. But at the same time, I think the message is strong here to be yourself. Just believe in who you are. And that's it at the end. But I know it's easier to say. Sometimes we are all living our work doubt moment. I have a lot of doubt moment in my career. I still have some, but it is at this time when you know who you are, what drives you, you can rely on this and then say, okay,
I have a tip on that. So can I give you a tip? Right, it worked for me. I had a coach a few years ago, and she said, when you have those moments of doubt, what you need to do is when you get really positive feedback from somebody, or when you ace something and you have that sense of, yes, I killed that, write it in the back of your notebook. And then when you're going into that situation or environment where you're having that moment of doubt, it's like giving yourself some positive self-talk. Go back to that back of your notebook and just remind yourself about those things that you've aced, and it will boost your confidence. So there you go.
I also do what I call, this sounds crazy, but you remember we're all friends here. I do the Superman pose, the whole it does. It really helps when you got to get that kind of up, get it together. So yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Hey.
Hey, gonna try it tonight. Awesome. Thank
You're
you.
going to have to show me that one later.
I'll show you. Yes.
We are.
No. Okay.
Ah, thank you. Valerie, go for it. Go for it. Go for it. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to open it up to questions, so please don't be shy. You heard from all of them. It's all about overcoming your fears. You're putting it out there, doing the bold thing. So
Do it.
go for it, Dina. We've got a microphone just so that everybody else can hear too.
Good, good. This has been fantastic. Thank you all. You touched a little bit on the working mom, right? And that all four of you have children, and all four of you have, leaped into leadership. We don't often hear the term working dad. We hear the term working mom, right? Because we're typically the ones who are managing the school schedules and the doctor's appointments and the birthday parties and the birthday gifts and all of that. Plus, there are many of us who want to go into leadership. What advice would you have for the working mom who wants to go into leadership but is reluctant because, but I have kids. How am I going to manage? How can I possibly do this? What is your advice to the working mom?
I can start. For me, what helps me a lot was that I identify key big rocks for me in my life is important with my family. Okay. And I stick to that. I just give you a couple of examples. For me, let's say for the homework, between, let's say, I don't know, it was between 6 and 8, let's say, or 6 and 7 the night, it was like for me non-negotiable. When I had my son with a lot of special needs, I know that sometimes I have appointments or so. And I was really, really transparent with all my bosses to say, you know what, it may happen that a day I will receive a call also that my kid, my son is really disorganized. I need to leave, and it may happen. So it is who I am. So if I took this job, comes with that. And I've been really even with Guy Cormier, I said to him this. So I said, you know what? I don't know. So I identify really the big rock moment, key moment. Fortunately, I travel, so sometimes the homework was not me, but I have a husband also, no? And it's been really, really good. And we have to be supported as well. I was lucky. My family was around me, the family of my husband as well. But just find some people sometimes that can support you as well. But for me, it was with that and quality moment with them and with technology. Honestly, it's so impressive now. So Facebook and all of that.
I suppose there's some similarity. I think if you think about a partnership that you might have in business, whether it's with an internal function or department or with an external partner, you'll normally do some level of contracting up front, won't you, about expectations of each other and what you need from each other. But in most relationships, marriages, civil partnerships, whatever you want to call them, we actually don't do that. And so my advice often to women and particularly working mums is start with having a domestic contracting conversation with your other half. What are your life expectations together? What are your career ambitions and aspirations? There was this book by Nicola Horlick in the UK about, women can have it all. And I do believe they can. I just don't think they can have it all at the same time. And you certainly can't have two high-flying careers that are both going at full pace at the same time for a very long time. It's a recipe for disaster. So my best bit of advice is be willing to have a conversation, be willing to reach some domestic agreements about partnership and sharing. When I was appointed into my first CEO job, the headline in the newspaper was "Mum appointed CEO." It would not have been Dad if it had been a man. And that signifies that societal expectation that it is still the woman that is doing all the domestic stuff. So I honestly think you have to lean into the conversation, be willing to have the kind of contracting conversation and rules of engagement that you would have in any other partnership. And it's not always easy, particularly if you've had a relationship that has functioned in a certain way for a long time. But when there's a trigger point about your aspiration or the opportunity that's in front of you, it's worthy of a conversation. And if your relationship is solid, it will withstand it, I think. So that would be my bit of advice.
So two things. My husband and I actually did something like that. He was the one who had the career. He worked at Hewlett Packard. He was a sales executive, and I worked part-time. I was a part-time teleworking mom that had 3 boys, and he got to a point where he was like, I don't like my job. And so we made the conscious decision to swap, because at the same time, they kept asking me to increase my hours, to do more at work. And so we agreed to swap. And then obviously he's been a trailing spouse, which by the way, he loves it. And I joke that he's the glue of the family because he deals with their parents, he deals with all the kids, the dogs, all of that, which is great. The other thing though is don't be afraid to tell your employer what you need. So as an example for me, I still had these three boys, young boys that I wanted to be around for. And I said, fine, you want me to come back? I'm happy to come back. I'm not stomping my foot about this. Um, and be a manager, which I want to do to be a leader. I need to be able to still telework because I don't want to be spending this time commuting. I want to be home when the kids get off the bus. And I was the first one in my company to be a teleworking manager because they had this rule that managers had to be in the office. But just by asking, it helped so much with me to alleviate some of my guilt as a mom. And it also helped us to balance that work life balance. So don't be afraid to ask either. If there's something that you need, ask for it.
That's excellent. And Jolie, just to add to, I really like the telework example you brought in because sometimes people think if I do telework, how will the organization see me? I'll never be able to progress and look at where you've come.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that example. Thank you. Another question? You sure? Yes.
I just have a question about how your own aspirations and what your visualization of where you saw yourself, how that helped either propel your aspirations or how maybe some opportunities may, in your opinion, may have been looked at differently because of that. Just that act of like actually looking and seeing where you want to go, right? And we talked about it a bit about how that's sometimes limited on what women can see.
So I had my first career coach in 2009, I think it was. And I have to be honest, I didn't enjoy the experience. I had been a high performer. I'd been, exceptional ratings, given more stretching opportunities. And then in 2009, I got another exceptional rating and told, and we're going to give you a career coach. And I immediately was like, why? What's wrong with me? And so I went into it kind of thinking, I'm going to hate this process. But as many of these really good processes do, it started with the self-assessment, the self-awareness. And what I realized was that actually I did have more potential, but there were some things that were holding me back. I could be quite bullish. I could be quite stubborn, and I've come quite a long way since then. Mostly. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I during that process, I was invited to write down in 5, 6, 7 years from now, what is your aspiration? And I wrote down something that I thought was terribly unrealistic, but it was what I felt. I was expecting to be criticized. And I wrote down that at some point, I would like to be an enterprise leader for an organization that placed as much emphasis and focus upon the satisfaction and well-being of its people as its customers. And I shared it with my manager and expected him to tell me I was nuts. And he said, yeah, and why shouldn't you? And so the reason I'm telling you that in response to that question is that was the first time I'd really done proper career planning. I'd never actually thought about it. I'd just seized opportunities as they came. I hadn't done it in a thoughtful way. And I think if I had done that and I'd had the opportunity to do that a few years earlier, I probably would have, because I accelerated really. I got my first CEO job 4 years later from that. And I actually got my first general management job 2 years later, but my first CEO job 4 years later. So it propelled me because I was very clear about what I was good at, what I brought to any given role, what my purpose was, and what the gaps were that I needed to close in order to go from a functional leader to an enterprise leader. And so it really accelerated me, but it came from a place initially of feeling like, I don't need this process. What is this process all about? So it was a real negative that turned into a definite accelerant for me.
Some of that really resonates with me. Funny story. When I was in Asia, I was meeting with my CEO, and I was an SVP at the time. And he said, "So, are you ready to be a managing director?" And I was like, "Oh, if that's what happens, that's great. I just want to go where I can help everyone. I don't chase the title." And I happened to tell my coach that story, and he's like, "I cannot believe you said that. You march yourself right back into his office and you say, 'Yes, I want to be a managing director.'" And I'm like, "Oh, but that seems too much about me, and I'm a servant leader with a little bit of catalyst." And then he said, "You don't get it." He said, "If as you climb, you're able to bring other people along." And he said, "So it's your responsibility to do more of that." And when he said that to me, it completely changed my mindset. And then I started to think more about my career. Instead of just going where I thought I could make a difference, I started to think about it more. And to Tracy's point, it was about 3 years ago when my CEO said, "So what do you want to do next? You've done life and health P&C, you've been risk management." And I said, "You know what? I want to be CEO of Canada."
Good for you. Good for you.
And so
Ask for what you want.
it's a lesson that when you overcome those self-censoring moments and you give voice to something that you want, even if you think it's far-fetched, much like you, when I sent that email, I thought for sure he'd come back and say, "Well, these are all your gaps." And no, he came back and said, "Yeah, makes complete sense." And so we have to get over our own internal self-doubt, because if you don't do that, you can never have the conversation to then make it a possibility, to then make it a reality. So that's the lesson. It's interesting we had that similar background.
So I'm not going in the same direction though, but that's good, diversity. So actually, I will disappoint you because I've never had a career plan. I've never figured out where I will be in the 10 or 15 years. However, it's maybe where I will cope with my colleagues. I knew what drove me. I know what I like to do. And the first thing when I took a new role all across my career was, okay, I need to do it well. I need to do great in my current job. So we'll see then. So it was like more in this mindset, but I've never said, honestly, là, I'm sure, let's say 15 years ago, là, if someone told me that I will become the president and CEO of DGIG, I would say, my God, it's a joke. So, but honestly, but it's just that I found what drives me on a regular basis. And every time that I've had choice to get a new role, it was always okay. Does it? So it comes back to the purpose, actually, Tracy. So okay, what I am good at, what every day when I'm wake up, I'm willing to go at work, and so it's what I found that helps me. Then I think to grow, because then it opens some doors. That's it.
Any other questions? One more.
Question maybe more for Tracy and Jolee. Given the different experiences that you have abroad and maybe with other industries, are there striking example when you arrive in Canada where you found that maybe Canada fared better than the rest of different industries or different countries? Or vice versa, did you identify areas where in Canada we can do things better?
So there are two things I think in that. The first is I came and did a orientation reconnaissance visit in September, and with my husband. And the thing that I noticed just being out and about in Toronto, in the shops, in the restaurants, in the streets, doing some of the tourist things that you do, I observed the multiculturalism that is very evident here. What has, however, surprised me now that I'm here is that it is not as evident in the senior business community as it is in the broader population. And I find that really surprising. And I have a commitment to help do something about it, as you'd expect. But I haven't yet spent enough time to understand what the driver of that is, but I do bring some relevant experience from the UK. So in the UK, I'm on the board of an organisation that was formed out of a government-initiated task force to address the lack of social mobility in financial services, where the data points in the UK are, you know, about 8 or 9% of the UK adult population has been through a private independent education, but in financial services, the C-suite role holders are represented by 89% of people holding those roles having had a private or independent education. So I have some experience of addressing a gap, and I want to bring that here. So I do think that it's fantastic that the society is multicultural. I think we've a lot more to do in business, and I'm not just talking about financial services, but business in general and financial services as well. And I think there is a big emphasis here and globally on gender, but we have to take that same effort into the other diversity strands. And we should be able to accelerate in those other diversity strands with the benefit of all the learning about the actions that work in the gender space, because many of them transcend into the other diversity strands as well.
Yeah, the one thing that surprised me is the lack of Indigenous representation. And I still don't quite understand that, and I don't know how to fix it, but that's definitely something on our radar. The other thing is, and this might get me into some trouble, but I'm going to say it anyway, that surprised me is the salaries here are lower than in other parts of the globe. I know that might be an uncomfortable topic, and I know there are benchmarks and all of that, but it was a surprise to me. And I can say that, you know, we look at the benchmark, and it was something that I focused a lot on to get people higher than the benchmark. And I tell my team, HR would probably hate me for this, I tell them exactly where they are on the benchmark. And if they're below the benchmark, which I don't think we have many below the benchmark, why? So that they can understand it, because it goes to that salary parity. We need to have more transparency around it. Funny enough, when I got this role, they were asking me to take a pay cut from my old role. And I was like, what? How's that work? Maybe I'm oversharing. I've been told I overshare. And so I went to an ally of mine, a male who's a peer of mine, and I'm like, what do you think? And he helped me feel very confident. It's the first time in my career where I negotiated over salary, and they made it right. I mean,
Nice girl, you see.
yeah. And so but I did my research on it and did all that. So that is something that I think there can be some more work done.
Thank you.
Even if he didn't ask me, may I ask something? No, Guillaume, that's great because it was for them, but just maybe the other way around, I would say, because I was part of, I told you already, but I was part of a leadership journey actually last year. And so I was with other CEOs around the world. But what struck me the most, it was the number of women. Okay, we were 42. We were 6 women out of the 42 in the leadership role. It is all people across the world. It was honestly, we said, and I said we because I was with my colleague Nathalie Larue, for those of you who know her, and we said it's not possible, and we're two in the same organization also. So okay, how we can, and we spoke up We told them, hey, just realize and look at you, all the men here, what happened? We are only 6 of us out of 42. So it's like, yes, so again, it's get back to the comment I had made earlier. So about don't take it for granted. But we were talking with those women that were there, and even them, some of them said, you know, in my country or in my industry, in my country, I'm almost alone. So it was like very crazy. So we really need to step up,
To be vigilant
to be vigilant
about what we
vigilant.
have too, because we take it for granted. And while we were asking the question, it was so interesting. All four of us are born in a different country, right? And it's truly diversity, bringing different perspective, the culture they're bringing, and you bring it into your role, and that's how you support clients. But it's also so important to have these conversations because truly, this is inspiring, and we need more of this, so that not only do we feel inspired, but we also pave the way for the next generation because we have to do more work along those lines. So, and I like the fact that you all touched upon a very touchy topic, diversity beyond the gender piece and, the salary. Two things that people shy away from talking because it's very uncomfortable, but I love that you all bold to talk about it. So thank you.
I think tomorrow Benaz will talk to me.
Exactly.
So thank you very much. Jolee.
We are all inspired. Nobody talk to me about it, please. Give me a break. But with that, we wrap up now. I want to say thank you. Don't want you to leave just yet, but I want to say thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being, when you talk about being authentic, honestly, I love the conversation we had. Jolee and Tracy, I know this was my first time meeting you guys, but you are truly inspiring and we feel close to you. I mean, just how you've shared the stuff, your vulnerability, I feel like we feel close to you, even though we are not within your organization. So thank you for creating that. And Valerie, I know many of the Desjardins group know you really well, but you've been a big support for me as well. Like when you think about allies, we joined during the pandemic. We got hit by it and we navigated that. We had a lot of individuals who were also, doubting some of our abilities, but we worked through all of it. And I feel like this is what we need, whether it's men or women, we need allies. So thank you. Thank you for all the things you do each and every day to make a difference. And to this group, before we wrap up though, I want to talk about something else that's important. So we're going to take 2 minutes of your time. We had the privilege of, oh, sorry, I think my glasses threw me off, but technical difficulties. Give me a few minutes. So we heard from the role models. We also need to know about the impact and lifting those around us. So each of us in this room today have helped someone less privileged. And it's something that we need to continue to do. I think about Michelle Obama, who really made a difference being the first lady there. There is no limit to what we as women can accomplish. And today, to wrap this up, I want to bring Ruth Craymond to the stage. Ruth is the Vice President of Community Investment and Development for the United Way. She's responsible for a broad range of United Way investments and agency partnership in community services. For us, we think about our group here. Regardless, we are a privileged group. And we need to think about how do we give back. Today we spoke about lifting one another, but there are people outside of this room who need a lot more from us. And it's not about the today. We are not asking for a donation for today. It's about making sure that we don't forget how we can impact the world around us. So with that, Ruth, if you can come up here for a few minutes, thank you.
Thank you so much to Banaz for your leadership with United Way. as a chair of our new business circle and on our campaign cabinet. And a deep thank you to Valérie and the Desjardins team here for supporting United Way and your partnership with us. I was just so taken by the panelists as a woman in leadership. I almost forgot that I had to get up and speak. I take so many lessons, and I'm writing notes for my daughters to inspire them, especially some of the comments about, getting more comfortable, being uncomfortable. I think we all have to work on that. But also, Banaz, I think you really set me up. We know that the pathways to leadership contain so many obstacles, and you've talked about your incredible journeys. The balance of work and home life, the pay gaps that we're talking about, and the challenges of distinguishing ourselves on our own terms as women. But these challenges can feel insurmountable for women living in poverty. And unfortunately, in the GTA, you spoke very positively about our diversity, but we do have over 300,000 women living in the GTA that are living below the poverty line. And we know that if women live in poverty, so do their children. So issues like domestic violence, for example, can further compound. And thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing your story. You talked about your grandmother helping you so much, or a family member. You've all talked about mentors. You talked about people who helped you lift up. But for many women in Toronto, it's the network of United Way funded services also that they reach out to and that have helped support them as they've gone through a difficult pathway through poverty. United Way invests $10 million across 103 programs in the GTA that are specifically designed for women. And I think we know that sometimes, women thrive in a diverse environment, but sometimes if they're feeling very vulnerable, programs that are especially designed for women, employment programs that also have childcare, if you have young children at home and you can't afford the childcare in order to get to the training program, or programs that understand that some women have gone through domestic violence and therefore might be still recovering from trauma and need some extra support before they can pay attention to their careers or their education. So I just want to give you an example of an incredible woman, Fatima, who came from Afghanistan not very long ago and landed at Pearson Avenue with her husband and her son. A United Way funded agency, Polycultural Immigrant Aid, helped her with her first days and weeks in settlement, managed to help them find an apartment. And they started their life in Canada. Unfortunately, the trauma of coming from a war-torn country continued to affect their lives, and her husband abused her. And she felt she needed to leave, but she had nowhere to go. She had no grandma, she had no family, she had no friends in Canada. But she did find her way to a shelter, a United Way funded women's shelter. And in fact, I just have to pause and say we have a table at the back, and I want to thank Desjardins that gave a whole lot of products and supports, which we'll be giving to Yellow Brick Shelter here in York Region to help with women and families there. But after the shelter, that was a good start to get away from her situation. But then she needed to figure out how to get back on her feet. And she was coming already with so many challenges. So she was connected with Afghan Women's Association, which is another United Way funded agency. So somebody who understood her culture, who could speak to her in Pashto and support her, right, was able to help her and get out of the shelter. And I'm happy to say that eventually she found her way through retraining. She's getting her accounting certificate program, and she got support for her son who also had autism and was able to get some supports for him in the school system through Afghan Women's Association. And he also attends United Way funded after school programs. So sometimes it's a whole network of agencies that have to wrap around women. They also need their mentors, they need their supporters, they need people who see them and can help them lift up. I also just want to mention before I close that even though things are very tough for many women, there are also incredible opportunities. And obviously the three women here with us tonight really demonstrate that. But we really believe in United Way at not just looking at deficit, but also looking at opportunities. And, that's why we're funding, for example, a Muslim young women's coding program for Muslim women. And 30 women went through the program last year and 26 found good paying jobs in tech. We also have an insurance pathway program, you'll be glad to know, to help not just women, but women and men in poverty who may not have right now the means to go on and do formal education, to go through a fast track program and find their way into the insurance industry, because we know it's a fantastic industry with good paying jobs and career opportunities. So those are the kinds of things that United Way is funding to give people hope. And I think our slogan for our Women United program, which is a leadership program for women who want to give through and with United Way, our slogan is, tell me what it is, Sarah, there on the back. So, and we really heard that today in every which way. But those of you who support United Way or your other favored charities in the community, you also are having the backs of other women who are not in this room. So thank you for just giving me a minute at the end of this inspiring event. If you're interested in United Way, we have some more information at the back. If you want to get more involved with in your workplace with employee giving, or you're interested in our Women United program, let us know. We'd be happy to connect you up. And we want to work together to make sure that no women are left behind.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you so much. And thank you for your leadership within the community. For those at Desjardins, I know you have the opportunity to contribute through payroll as well. So now you know where your money goes in supporting women as well. So thank you. And, on behalf of Desjardins, we've got the basket too for women. But once again, it's all about what you can do. And it's beyond the money. We had a mentoring session with some of those youth, and that's the thing. You have the opportunity to play a role to change the life of someone else. So please do that. So with that, I know we have something here. So to thank Ruth, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all the work that you do. And to our panelists, on behalf of all of us, I'm going to start with you, Tracy. Thank you. Thank you so much for being amazing. Thank you. To Jolee, thank you. And thank you to continue to inspire us and lead the way for the next generation. Thank you.